Hey YouTube, Puff and Snuff here, Ian. Checking in as always from beautiful Northeast Ohio. I have a twofer for you today. Two reviews for the price of one. Um, it's and there's Winston the Bulldog making an appearance in the background. I apologize for the lighting in here. I don't really know what's going on. I think it's a camera thing. It's not nearly that dim in this room. I mean, it's not helped. The light is like overhead and behind me a little bit, so I'm kind of backlit. But I think it might be a camera thing because the room is not nearly as dim as the picture. But yeah, what can you do? At any rate, we're going to do two reviews. It's been a one of those days and weeks at work that you'd just like to forget. So, best way to do that is to spend Friday evening with a snoot full of snuff. We're going to be talking about Old Mill, Acadia, and Evangeline. Before I launch into the reviews, I've said on here in most of my Old Mill reviews that you don't get Old Mill tins by weight, you get them by volume, and so it's small, medium, large. If you haven't bought from Old Mill, want to know what small, medium, large looks like, here is an example for you. This, I know it's probably customary to use like a quarter or a $50 or something, but I don't have them lying around. I don't feel like walking out to my car. So this that's a standard Zippo lighter. I'm sure most of us have them or have seen them. Um, so that's the Zippo. Okay, this is a small tin. This is the Acadia that I'm working on. Okay, so the Acadia dimensionally, I mean, one's round, one's rectangular. Acadia slightly smaller dimensionally than a Zippo. Okay, moving up in size, this is the medium. Okay, I would say roughly double the size, probably ish. This is the Bananas Foster. So small, medium, and that's the large tin. So the large tin is significantly bigger than the medium. I'm sorry, that's the small and the large. So see if we can. I don't know if you can see that. They're large, medium, small. One other comparison: if this is the large, which is Evangeline, this is the 10-gram tin from Toke. So the 10-gram tin from Toke is still a fair bit bigger than the Old Mill large. However, they're close in terms of height. They may actually be identical. One key difference though is that when you get most of the name brand, the ones that we've all become very familiar with, except for Wilson's Ashero, they overpack those and it's a mess when you open the tin. But Sam Gawith, Toke, there's always plenty of room inside the tin because it's by weight. So they weigh it out, they put it in a tin that's big enough to hold it, and there's always plenty of room. When you open the Old Mill, I mean, it is packed to the gills. So that's kind of what we mean when Old Mill snuffers are talking about sizes. And this, I mean, it looks awfully small, but you can get quite a bit of snuffing out of this. One, because the flavors are often so layered and so intense, you don't need to take huge hits of it, huge pinches at a time, and also because there's so much in these things, it goes a lot further than you might think. Anyway, on to the snuff. We're going to be talking about the Acadia and the Evangeline, and anyone who has read the menu at Old Mill knows that Chef Daniel is very tied in, connected to his Cajun heritage, and so a lot of his blends have a French American or a Cajun kind of naming convention to it. These are no different. Acadia, of course, was the area in Maine and I think up into Canada where the French Americans had originally settled. Called it Acadia. As they got moved out and came further south to Louisiana, Acadia, kind of turned into, being an Acadian kind of turned into being a Cajun. And then Evangeline comes from a poem. I'm not quite sure who it is. I think it might be Longfellow, but I don't know for sure. He wrote kind of an epic poem, The Tale of Evangeline, and um, it's been a long time since I read it, but I know there's a love component to it, but she's basically an Acadian during the time where they were kind of being kicked out of northeastern North America and moved south. So Evangeline pops up a lot in anything really connected to Cajun culture. So the names are no surprise. Here's what's in the snuff. Now that we've had our history lesson that nobody cares about, let's talk about the tobacco. Acadia is just tobacco. We're not adding anything to this puppy. I assume there's probably something added in to adjust for pH, but no flavorings here. It is just tobacco. It is Old Belt, flue-cured, orange, red, and gold Virginia. Fire-cured Orinoco, which I'm going to be honest, I don't really know what Orinoco tobacco is. I'm sure I've had it in a snuff before, but I don't know that I've known that I've had it. And the key component, St. James Perique. There's also some burley in here. I am, in pipe world, a huge Perique fan. This is the first snuff I've had that used Perique. So that's the Acadia. And the reason we can kind of do two reviews in one is that Evangeline is basically Acadia. Well, it is Acadia plus some scenting. So the Evangeline, he's essentially taking Acadia, and to it he adds rye whiskey, absinthe, sarsaparilla root, sassafras leaves, wild cherry bark, honey, Meyer lemon bitters. So a nice little tobacco blend with Perique. That very same tobacco blend with a whole bunch of interesting scents added to it. So let's crack her open. So the Acadia, and with this lighting you'll never see it. Let me try something here. That's a little bit better, I guess. Grainy, but hard to see, so I'm not really going to waste your time. You'll just have to take my word for it. It is quite coarse. In the description, he says it's a medium coarse grind. I would be inclined to disagree with that. I would say it is a quite coarse grind. It is almost flaky, and it's a grainy, and that means nothing to you right there. It is a very grainy, very flaky looking tobacco. It's not chunky, if that makes sense, the way like a Rapé, or if you've had, I think it's Sam Gawith's London Brown, is like almost like little mini pellets of tobacco that you gotta snort and you push your nostrils together to make it stick. It's not quite that coarse, but it is certainly quite coarse if you're used to things like Toke, most Sam Gawith, things like that. So in the tin, it smells like dirt in the best possible way. It's very earthy, very vegetal, and that's because there's nothing in here but ground tobacco leaves. The color, by the way, is I'd say medium to dark brown. It's certainly not black. It's definitely a brown. And the smell is just... a lot of times you hear Latakia tobacco described as kind of a woodsy, burning, leafy kind of smell. I would say this actually smells like, in a big way, a pile of dried leaves and some dirt, which is not a bad thing. So let's get this in the nose, and this is one I would take a medium to small pinch just because of the size of the grind. In the nose, there's no surprise. The actual scent in the nose is virtually identical to the scent that is in the tin. It's a very leafy, earthy, vegetal, and there's a little pepperiness, which I can only assume comes from the Perique. Looking at it, looking at the grind, and looking at the color, and smelling it in the tin, you'd expect it to probably feel very heavy in the nose, possibly almost irritating because of the coarseness. I don't find that to be the case. Um, and what you're smelling literally is all those different tobacco components, and it's really a wonderful, wonderful snuff. There's a little burn, which I don't know if that's from nicotine or from the Perique. One thing I will warn about both of these blends, at least for me, Perique seems to have a tendency to really want to cause some drip, both front and back. If you feel the drip a-coming, I would very strongly recommend that you try to eliminate that from the front the best you can, because the Perique in here, it can be a little irritating and a little stingy if it goes down the back of the throat. I think if you've smoked Perique tobaccos, Virginia Perique blends, especially stronger ones, where you really get that sinusy pepper feel, I think you can probably imagine what the snuff is like. It's much that same kind of peppery sensation. Not the way, it's not that whoosh kind of mustardy, wasabi sinusy thing. It's actually like, I don't know. Other than saying peppery, try a Perique snuff or smoke a Perique pipe blend to know what we're talking about. Um, Very good. And because it's just tobacco and there's really no scent that's being absorbed or inhaled, the scent lasts an incredibly long time. One pinch will carry you to 20, 30 minutes or more just in terms of scent, if you can keep it in that long without having to clear away any drip. So that's the natural. Now to the scented. This is the first I've cracked this tin. This is not the first time I've had Evangeline. I actually just ordered 3 of these large tins, and you can see it is like overflowing up around the edges. I mean, this is packed in, and this is dense. I mean, I'm pushing on it. I mean, I'm with some force, and it's hardly leaving a fingerprint. So, as with a lot of his, you have to kind of almost use a spoon to kind of scrape a little off the top to loosen it. So, smelling the tin. It smells exactly like you'd expect from the description. The vegetal perique leafiness is not completely obliterated by the scenting, so it's good that you pick up that tobacco. The first thing I get is that sweet anise that you'd expect from absinthe. I don't get the whiskey in the tin. And I get a little bit of the sassafras and sarsaparilla. There's a generic sweetness, which I assume is coming from the honey, but I'm not picking up in the tin note the whiskey or the lemon bitters. So now to the nose. I'll scrape off a little. I'll just kind of show you. You kind of work the tool in there a little bit to fluff up the top, and we'll take a pinch here. While that settles in, I'll tell you that the grind on this is a bit finer, I think, than the Acadia, which he doesn't. He does. He says he grinds it to a fine grind, which I would agree with. It's medium fine to fine, but it's quite moist compared, especially I think compared to this, the Acadia. It's quite moist. Not schmaltzer moist, not by a long shot, but it's definitely, it will stick to your finger and it'll pill. In the nose, this is one of those layered snuffs which really benefit from repeated use, throughout the day. It develops that same Perique sting. Everything I said about the drip in the Acadia is true for the Evangeline. And the first thing you get in the nose is what you get in the tin, which is the vegetal leafiness of the tobacco with the anise, licorice almost quality, and the honey from the absinthe and then the honey that's in there. But as it sits in there, it really starts to transform. I've never picked up the rye whiskey. I've the entire tin I went through the first time. I've tried to pick out the rye whiskey and I can't find it, or the lemon bitters. But what I get a woodiness, which is from, I would imagine, from the sassafras and the wild cherry bark. But what's really cool is when that sarsaparilla starts to come out, which sarsaparilla is a root beery kind of drink when they make a beverage out of it. And you really kind of get that in your nose. I'm not going to say it's like a root beer snuff. That would be a gross oversimplification, because there's a lot more in there than that. But you do get a sort of a licorice and root beer and woodsy and leafy and earthy kind of quality to it that is really, really, really remarkable, and in my opinion, incredibly addictive. Not talking in this case, and I know addictive is always a touchy subject with a lot of people who snuff, because for a lot of us it's not about a nicotine addiction or needing a nick fix. I mean, the scent itself is so good that you never want to lose it, and it sticks around for a while. You're going to get the all of those additives, the scents that he puts in there. You're going to get that for a good 10-15 minutes, and then the natural leafiness lingers every bit as long as it does with the Acadia. So you can get a good 20 minutes to a half an hour out of a decent pinch of this. I'm getting just that little bit of backdrip. But yeah, it's one of those where if this is the snuff that I decide to have a pinch of when I get out of the shower in the morning to kind of wake up and start the day, I know that by taking that pinch, that this is the snuff that I'm going to use all day long and probably tomorrow. It's that good. It is my favorite snuff of all right now. There are plenty of snuffs I haven't had, but of the probably 40 or 50 or so that I have tried over the last few years, this is the only one that I can comfortably say I like more than Viking Dark. Oh, I can't get enough. I'm going to do another, even though I've already got the drip, and even though I've already got a nose full of this stuff, we're going to do another pinch here. See if I can find anything else in here to talk about. You do want to take a little more care than I just did on that left nostril insufflation with this, because it is a fine grind, even though it's moist. Because it is a fine grind, it is very easy to suck that up way too far. And I'll tell you what, Perique gets, well, that's a beautiful sight. Perique gets back into those sinuses, boys and girls, and it will, it'll wake you up. Man, that is so good. That is so good. For me, Acadia, as a generically calling it a snuff, I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. As a natural snuff, just tobacco, it's a 10 out of 10 for me. I think it's the best just tobacco snuff I've had. Evangeline is like a 47 out of 10, probably. Can't say enough about this. It is not unlikely that the time will come that I will stumble upon something that I can appreciate even more than this one. But for now, nothing in my world's touching it. And it it's like someone mixed absinthe and root beer, made it a little less sweet, tossed it next to a big pile of clean, dry leaves sitting out in the sun, and did all of these things and turned it in the best way possible and turned it into an absolute masterpiece of a snuff. Cannot recommend that enough. If you haven't checked out Old Mill Snuffs, you probably should. And if you haven't checked out Evangeline, you absolutely should. Guys, that is all for me. I have gone on and on and on enough about this and surely repeated myself beyond what is entertaining and educational for you. So that is all for me. Please feel free to subscribe, like the video. Where's the finger? There it is. Like the video down there. Subscribe. Tell your friends. That's all from me for tonight, guys. I'm going to go settle in with some more of this bad boy, put on a movie, pour a drink, and try to forget the week that was. We'll see you later.